Okay, I'm going to call this meeting of Gloucester School Committee to order. It is October 13th, Wednesday night. We are going to come into session only to go into executive session. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with the state open meeting law, consistent with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, banning certain gatherings, that an in-person meeting of the school committee is not possible. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. We are going to go into executive session, and we will come out of executive session and restart the meeting, the public meeting at 7 o'clock. So I'll make a motion that we go into executive session. The school committee will meet in executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 221A, for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining with the GTA, GAPE, Teamsters, and AFSCME, and will return to open session at approximately 7 p.m.
Second.
Said, Mayor, can we have a roll call vote?
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Wiesen.
Yes.
Okay, we're going into executive session. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting back into session. I apologize to the public. We've been in executive session and we've had a lot to discuss. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with the state open meeting law, consistent with the governor's orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning certain gatherings such that an in-person meeting of the school committee is not possible. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. If you're calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer or device, there is a raise hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. We don't have a flag, so we're going to skip to the
In the back.
all the way in the back. Okay, we got it. No, that's fine. We can see it. I'm going to ask you to join me in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So by not being on, I can't see or recognize people on oral communications. So we're going to open up oral communications. The public shall have the opportunity at every regular school committee meeting to be heard under oral communications. Oral communications shall allow any resident who has a request or complaint of any nature relative to the school committee business to appear before the school committee, state their problem without debate, and the matter may be referred to the proper subcommittee. For items that are on the agenda, members of the public may address the committee with the permission of the chair. Persons speaking under oral communications shall be limited to 3 minutes and shall submit a copy of their prepared communication to the recording secretary. The school committee chair shall not allow complaints as to individual performance or character. That being said, I'm going to open up oral communications if anybody would like to speak. Yeah. Cynthia Machowski.
Okay. Thank you so much. Cynthia Mahowski. I'm a teacher at Gloucester High School, and I'm also a citizen in the Gloucester over at 13 Wall Street. And so I am just two things because I know that the bargaining session that's happening between the Gloucester Teacher Association and the school committee, it is a public meeting, public comments not happening there. So just to comment on, just a reminder that when, just the disappointment over the budgeting and the offer of the 1% raise, which isn't really much considering all that teachers do, and especially in the last year. I do ask, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but there is in the Gilnetter, our high school newspaper, an open letter to the school committee from one of our teachers, Mr. Celestino Basili, who's been teaching for 37 years. So I invite the school committee to make sure you go onto the Gilnetter to read his letter, and for the public to look at it as well. And a reminder that when you're setting budgets, that a budget is a statement of values, and how much you allocate in for each item in a budget reveals your priorities. And it's clear from the negotiations that have been happening with the school committee that you don't prioritize teachers. We have kept the schools open because it's about the money. Yes, I know that we've had great working relationships. Like the disadvantage is I can see close up when you're rolling your eyes or shaking your head and you can't see me in my facial expressions. And so that's even just more frustrating when I see that. But at this point, it's about, basically putting your money where your mouth is. And so when I would just like, just better negotiations, definitely the pay raise that we well deserve. And once again, please go to the gilnetter.com for the public and for the school committee members to read that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And Doherty, Matthew Doherty.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, so recently my daughter was sent home because she was in close proximity to a COVID-19 positive. And I was wondering if she wears her masks. I thought that's what wearing masks was there to prevent, being sent home from being near a COVID positive. I mean, why would she be sent home or asked to take multiple tests if she's wearing a mask?
Yeah, sure. Ben, can you address that? That's
In a general way, not specific to it.
Yeah, so hi, Mr. Doherty, this is Ben Lum, Superintendent. So we have different protocols. So last year, it was very simple in terms of the state-wide requirements and recommendations and the protocols we were following. If someone was a close contact, they went home and they quarantined for at least 7 days. This year, there are different protocols depending on a few things. So if someone is vaccinated, then they have to do one thing. If they're not vaccinated, they have to do another thing. In terms of close contacts, the important piece here is 3 feet or above. If someone is masked and is 3 feet or further away from being a close contact, then they come in and they're fine. They just keep doing school as normal. If they were masked and closer than 3 feet, they're allowed to come back into school, but they can do test and stay, which is being tested every morning with a rapid test to make sure that they don't have don't have COVID. So it's just that it's really that 3 feet or more distance. So you can be a close contact and be 5 or 6 feet away. You're determined to be a close contact, but you don't have to do anything as long as you're masked. If you're closer than 3 feet, and some of our students are, depending on how they're working, what they're doing in class, then you can come in, but you have to be masked. You have to be tested. And then there are other options if you don't want to be tested, but that's not, I don't think that's what you're asking. So I hope that's clear enough, but it really depends on the distancing, which we determine through an investigation for each case in each school.
So the masks don't come into play at all in this regard? I mean, they're all wearing masks, and I was told that the masks prevent the spread. So because she was in close contact to a COVID positive, just near that positive case, she's out for 10 days. I mean,
So no, it's a matter of all those folks I described are all masked. So everyone's masked, okay? Things change if you're unmasked. They get much more less lenient. But what I described is 3 feet or more masked or close to 3 feet or masked. Masking doesn't eliminate it, but it allows you to, like last year, for example, if you're masked and close than 6 feet, you had to be out. Now, if you're masked and you can stay in, you have to get tested if you're close to 3 feet, or if someone doesn't want their child tested, they do have to stay out. So that's the only reason someone has to stay out, is if they don't want their child tested every day for 5 days. You can also follow up either with my office or with your nurse tomorrow, or your principal, and we can talk it through more specifically if you have further questions.
Yeah, I emailed you and I didn't get a response, so I guess that's it then.
Thank you. I hope this gets resolved. Is there anything else on oral communications? I'm going to close oral communications and we're going to move on to comments from the chairperson. And I would just like to acknowledge that I and the rest of the school committee have received upwards of 75 emails. There's 2 versions that we get. They seem to be cut and pasted and sent on to us. One of them claims that we don't respect teachers. And I'd just like to say that we are very respectful for teachers. I personally was married to a teacher that taught in this system. My mother was a teacher that taught in the Gloucester system. Most of our friends are teachers. And I'm offended when we say we don't respect. There are many ways of showing respect. And there's another, the issue that we need to reward everybody, because of the job they did last year, is just beyond our capacity. The reality is the teachers did an outstanding job, but the bus drivers did an outstanding job. The nurses did more than an outstanding job. And we can't really single out one group and say that, and reward one group when we, everybody needs to reward it. But the city is not, it is a government facility. We have a budget for this year. There isn't anything that's going to change in our ability to pay people until next year. And then it'll probably stay the same. The city can raise its taxes 2.5%. And that is the functioning number that we use every year to budget, is a 2.5% increase. So we're limited by that. I would just like to say about negotiations, we are trying to negotiate with the teachers. The way negotiations work is you say this is what we want, we say this is what we can give you, and then you come back and say, well, we'll take this, and then we'll say, well, we can give you that. That's what we're supposed to be doing, not belittling the other people, the other parties. I just hope that on Monday, that's the way things go. So thank you very much. Gloucester High School Student Advisory Council, do we have Katie Provost? No. Nate Oaks, sorry, Katie. I misjudged your age.
Hey guys.
Hi, Nate.
Hi everyone.
Well,
So just some announcements. Here's some stuff to talk about. We're having a pep rally outside on Friday with all grades are welcome. We got some really awesome planning going on for that. We're excited because the new music teacher, Mr. Lundquist, is going to come out and play some music with the band. Before that, Spirit Week has been going on all week. It's been really awesome so far. We saw a lot of really cool characters. A lot of people put a lot of thought into it. A couple people dressed up as Pitbull, I saw, which was very funny. And it built some good morale to start the year off. This Friday after the pep rally is our homecoming football game. Our theme is Think Pink, because we just sold a bunch of Think Pink t-shirts and ribbons. So we're all going to be wearing that at the game, or just pink for kids who didn't get one. And at the halftime of that game, the king and queen of homecoming will be announced. I don't know who that is. I know it's a tight race. Today was also the PSATs. Today was the PSATs. Garden Club has been working to start by painting rocks all around their new garden, just to build some creativity. NHS is volunteering many hours in the free food locker on the first floor at the health center, and NHS tutoring is still underway. And then finally, the semi-formal tickets have been on sale all week, and that is going to be happening on November 1st. That's a Tuesday, and we're not, or no, that's a Monday, and we don't have school the next day. So that's it.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Okay,
How are preps for the theater production going?
Good. We're almost moving into Tech Week pretty soon. The show is going to begin 2 weeks from now, I believe. I think November 15th, I want to say. That might be really wrong. Miss Kirk might kill me for saying that. But yeah, it's moving along really well.
Great.
any other questions? Well, thank you, Nate, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that anybody would like to remove for further discussion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda. Second.
Okay, Maria, can we have a roll call vote?
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Poe,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Weason.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Next order of business is our deliberations on educational issues, and we'll start with the superintendent's report, and I'll turn it over to Superintendent Munnis.
Good evening, folks. Hello, everyone at home. So tonight, I'll give a few updates on just on where we are on some COVID matters. Then we're going to hear, I think, what should be a very helpful update and presentation from Assistant Superintendent Greg Bach and our Director of Special Education, Katie Provost, about the professional development that we're doing for the year, and specifically what we've done just recently on 2 different professional development days. And then we'll also then do a first step on what hopefully will be a process that will lead to some long-term decisions about building use. So I'm just going to start a short presentation here. There we go. Okay. So just as we continue to say that our purpose this year is safely educating all of our students in our schools every day to maximize learning, address our students' full needs, and support community and family needs. It's going pretty well so far. Sort of some of the fits and starts of September have led into some smoother operations in October. In terms of update on our COVID cases, so things are fluctuating pretty rapidly. So 3 weeks ago, our last school committee update, we had 1 active case. I'll show you what happened before in 2 weeks before that. Right now, we've got 14 active cases spread pretty well across all schools. We continue to report every week, both on our dashboard that's on our Everyday Matters website, and then also each school is giving out communication once a week on active cases and total cases for each school. And those can also, and then of course reporting at the school committee meetings as well, just as I'm doing right now. So I'll update this as we go. You can see September 8th. the first school committee meeting of the school year, there were 12 cases, then down to 1, now back at 14. So the case in Gloucester are sort of, in a sense, mirroring that. We may be lagging a little bit in the sense that the cases recently in Gloucester have gone down over the past week, even though some of the schools have gone up. So maybe we'll follow this with a downturn, but it's sort of week to week. Just skip that for a second. Yeah, so COVID testing and for staff and students, we're having some real challenges here. The state from the summer end of summer was saying that they were providing staffing for schools and districts that wanted to do 3 types of testing, sort of symptomatic testing, test and stay for folks who've been close contacts inside school, and then also the weekly testing, the weekly COVID safety check, weekly testing, formerly known as pool testing. We've had some difficulties with the state staffing. A lot of this burden is falling on our nurses right now. This week, we don't have a contractor from the state. They're hoping to get us a new one for next week. I was on a phone call today about perhaps you may have read in the paper about the National Guard supporting some of this work. That's a real sort of statement about the difficulty they're having staffing. So we're looking at how we can maintain test and stay. We'll maintain the symptomatic testing. We may have to put the weekly COVID testing on hold. We did for this week for lack of staffing. Maybe after next week, and then hoping to start again the following week. It's just a challenge. Our staff cannot do, our own nurses cannot do all of those things. It's too much, honestly. But they can. And we're hoping to get some help with test and stay as well for them. But we can probably still manage the test and stay as long as there is some real fast spike. But just want folks to know, and we'll be communicating with families about the weekly testing being on hold. Weekly testing, whether it was last spring at O'Malley or GHS or this fall, we've had very, very few positive cases through through the pool testing. So it's not, I would say of the 3, the most important are the 2 we're keeping. If a student or staff member has symptoms during the day, they can get tested immediately. And then also, if they have been a close contact in school, they can get test and stay, which is when they during the day they're tested with a rapid test. So those are important to keep going, and we will be able to do that, not without some stress and strain, but we will be able to keep that going through some great work from our nurses, and also our one new staff member who's helped us, Kylie Davis, who's helped us with the pool testing last year and is continuing to help us, and then also the leadership of Jeff Parko. So, yeah.
What is our participation in pool testing?
Sure, I was looking at the numbers today. We have some pretty high numbers in terms of from what I shared with you 2 weeks ago. So we're well over 100, about 150 at O'Malley and GHS. We're just below 100 at West Parish and Plum Cove, and then sort of in the 50s and 60s in the other schools. So it's definitely we've been doing some more outreach, and we haven't pushed it really hard, honestly, because we're aware of the staffing challenges. But once that gets sorted out, we'll push it even harder. I do want to just say again that those staffing challenges aren't just Gloucester. That's across the state in many places. That's why the state's pulling the National Guard too. So it's not just us having some challenge with that.
So the staffing challenges, we are the ones who are doing the pool testing, like staff of our schools are doing the pool testing.
No, we're helping, but it's really it's supposed to be the state contractors who are really doing that. And we've had to step in and help manage that because we've had some challenges on the coordination of it. So that's where Jeff Parko and Kylie Davis are helping with the sort of organization of that. But really what we've been hoping is that the state staffing would take care of that fully.
Okay, so we're not looking to sort of fix the issue internally. We're looking.
No, I mean, what we really need, honestly, what would be very helpful, I think, is some folks to help with some of that test and say that sort of thing. So to take that burden further off our nurses. You know, it doesn't, you don't have, we or the state can, we can train people to do that. You know, you don't have to be a healthcare professional to do it. But I say that, you know, we could definitely use some support in our schools, and it's hard, don't know how to get it, very honestly. But to help our nurses out, I think would be welcome. You know, we've added Kylie, but I could add, you know, 2 more people and, or, you know, part-time people in each school, and I think that'd be helpful for us, honestly.
And is that something we're marketing?
Not yet, just because we haven't got, you know, it's sort of like, because the staffing has fallen off just in the past few days.
Okay.
So we're not there yet, but I think we will. Just gotta figure out really what that, remember, we advertised last year on the coordination of the pool testing?
Yeah.
That's how we found a couple of people. So I might have to do something along those lines. And, in terms of winter sports, so winter sports start after Thanksgiving. I'll come forward next meeting on October 27th for recommendations. Brian LaFada will be consulting with NEC schools. You know, he already is, and we'll go forward on that. And we're also expecting guidance from MIAA. We're hoping it won't come too late. But yeah, so we're sort of looking into that. And then we'll please look forward for folks to hear about and discuss. And this time, so our last meeting, I think the day after our last meeting, the state came out with just sort of reiterating the mask mandate, the statewide mask mandate is still in effect. They have said that if schools reach 80% vaccination rate for all student and staff, and they can consider removing masks. I don't have the latest numbers on our vaccination rates. As you saw last meeting, they're going up some. We're well over 80% on staff. We're at essentially 99% on staff. But still on schools for 7th to 12th graders, we're not near that yet. You know, the highest percentage being 12th graders that are around 70%. So we cannot consider removing the mask mandate, the state mask mandate, until we get to that threshold. So that's what I have to begin right now, and I'm going to hand it off to Katie Provost and Greg Bach. If there are any questions?
Any questions on? Okay, well.
Sure.
Need screen sharing when you have a moment.
Yep, I just did it.
Okay.
While you're sharing, Greg, I just want to say to Mr. Pope, I appreciate you thinking that I'm younger than I am.
You gotta do something right once in a while.
Okay. At a recent subcommittee meeting, there was some discussion about providing information, and then lots of information, but trying to streamline the part that we discussed. So in the spirit of that discussion, I have provided on the presentation that was all shared with you, several areas where you're welcome to look into detail, and it's pretty detailed. I'll just click on them, orient you, and then I'm going to get back out. So I won't take you through all of that, I promise. I think it's important when talking about professional development this year and I haven't done this before, but to look back a little bit, because the story of where we are right now at this moment has a lot to do with where we left off and what we are getting back to and what we're prioritizing, because we had a full head of steam on a lot of areas. And so that the important thing is to not just stop doing everything that we were doing before and pick up some new toys. That we want to be really careful not to do that. So I'm actually going to show you a couple of things and some highlights and priorities that we had, how they may have shifted somewhat, but I think you'll find that a lot of those themes and initiatives we're staying true to those. We tried to last year as much as possible, and this is a year of returning to that. So the last, in the 1920 year, we had some priorities, including intrinsic motivation, meeting individual needs, strengthen tiered system of supports. And I'm mentioning these because we're going to be touching on those in the current plan. culturally responsive, equity-minded teaching informed by data-based inquiry cycles, curriculum development, literacy across content areas. So these are some major themes. And if you're interested, you can click on detail, for example, and you can see the full day by day, week by week breakdown of what we were doing in the 1920 school year. We haven't even gotten through August yet. And so it goes week by week, day by day. So you can actually see what those workshops are, as well as links to catalogs with detail. So I'm going to hop back. I'm going to try to get back to the tab here. Okay. And so if you are interested and want to take a browse through that, you're quite welcome to do that. Okay, the highlights from that year, these are the highlights. You had a chance to take a look at those. I'm not going to read through all of those, but they include categories in curriculum and instruction, science, literacy, universal design for learning, dyslexia. There was a lot of work in support of the sustainable improvement plans around engaging students in academic language and discussion, and building relationships. So a lot of those threads were forming in the 1920 school year anyway. 2020-21, at any time, you're welcome to take a look at the detailed plans from last year. It was really about responding to the immediate needs. And you'll see that a number of our priorities really shifted. We had a lot of health and safety training. We shifted to online and remote platforms, Seesaw, Google Classroom, lots of those kinds of things, psychological first aid for all of our teachers. So you can see we were really shifting gears to respond while not letting go of some of that academic focus, teaching in tough times, trauma-informed care for our students. But we also introduced a really extensive new assessment system in STAR 360, which you've had a report about. And we tried to continue as much as possible the academic focus while adding these pieces on. They definitely took priority, and they took a fair amount of our time. You can take a look at those details if you want. The 2021-22 school year is really about a year of transition. So how do we continue the work that we started in 1920 while being mindful of what our staff and students and families have been confronted with over the last 18 months. And so we need to make sure that we've got a blend of both of those. We also need to look really carefully at learning loss, which is why we've really increased a lot of our programs in the summer and tutoring, which are not reflected in here. This is only professional development. What I'm showing you now and going forward may adjust slightly based on the plan that is in progress for continuous improvement. But this is really based on the superintendent's entry plan findings. You will probably recognize some of these categories around student engagement and connection to school, and strengthening instruction and learning and engagement. And what I did with the help of a group of people who met to take the entry findings and to take a careful look at what we have been doing and what we plan to see where they fit in those categories. Sometimes they cover multiple, but it was an excellent exercise and one we're going to continue to do during the continuous improvement plan development process, which is to identify where are we heavy? Are we heavy on curriculum and content, and light on connections to school and so on? So this is a really good exercise that we are undertaking right now. So I share this sort of header with you because I think you'll see this a lot, and you'll see that evolve a little bit over the next few months, maybe with a little bit more definition. And so for this year, put things in, why am I not moving forward here? Put them in context for this current year and what we've been doing. I've put a bold border around each of those categories for things that we have been engaged in already. So as far as strengthening student connections to school, September 14th, Amy Cam has been working the equivalent of 3 different people. It seems she has really taken off with a lot of plans that she's had for quite a while, meeting with lots of people. And one of the things that she did was to bring in Lynn Lyons to provide clinical staff consultation, supporting anxious and school avoidant students. We had Rick Irving on September 14th. He provided training to our paraprofessionals, language and techniques to help preteens and adolescents manage anxiety, but it's toward developing confidence and resilience and making that connection to school and schoolwork. So just so you know that we're constantly making that connection to the experience of school and the work of school and the academic pieces as well. Understanding challenging behaviors to support our students, academic success through sales. On October 5th, in this category of connections, we had a pre-K through 8 presentation from Jessica Minahan, who is author of the Behavior Code and a national and international speaker and consultant. And she really helped understand the role of anxiety, but really focused on concrete, actionable strategies and steps for engaging students in tasks, for interacting with students who might be responding in ways that we don't recognize, and to ways to redirect, diffuse those, but also really how to turn those into productive moments. And that was an excellent presentation, and we are working with a group to identify a part 2 in the future, hopefully in the near future. Again, anytime, just flag me down. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity on the behavioral piece, have you gotten feedback from the staff about how helpful this has been so far as they're sort of addressing new behaviors in the beginning of the school year?
Yes, and actually saw some of the strategies in action the very next day, which was very nice to see, and heard some of the language that was being used. One of the best indicators I saw was to sit in the audience and see the amount of note taking. That's one of my indicators for how people are, whether they're seeing as relevant and engaging, and an awful lot of nodding and note taking, and some very excited people. That the challenge in all professional development and all strategy introduction or training is how we go from understanding to making it automatic. And that's hard in all of our lives. We learn all kinds of things and we think, that's it, that's how I'm going to be able to do this. And then turning that into a school-wide routine or a classroom routine that we just go to. That's the challenge. Sure. And that's why we'll try to continue.
Just to add to that, I was working with Principal B this morning, and she was explaining to me how the follow-up they're doing in O'Malley from Jess Minahan's presentation. So they already did some work at the faculty level across the faculty. And then I think the leadership teams are also going to continue to follow up on that too. So that's the other piece, is that we never want it to be like just a one-shot thing. Right. So sure. I think also Jessica Minahan is going to be doing a consult with the principals as well. It's a follow-up too. So that's great. We always want to have it so it's multi-leveled, just so we can get to what Greg's talking about.
I have a quick question. Do you record your professional development?
We do in some cases. That particular one, we were not allowed to. Well, I'll take it back. It was recorded. It's not something that particular presenter typically allows, but she allowed us to use it in a very limited capacity for anybody who might have had a technology interruption, okay. And then it has to be deleted. So there are presenters who are absolutely fine with it, and there are those who make it clear that that's not what they want to do. So in that case, no, we were not able to keep a perpetual copy.
And do any of the presenters give like PowerPoint presentations to hand out? I'm just thinking
Yes,
of
they do.
days
Yeah,
when I was in law school and trying to keep as many notes as you can, and then you go back and try to figure it
yeah,
out.
and
just
we,
be helpful to have
she
tools.
provided and we provided a note-taking template with a lot of the headings of the categories and provided that for everybody, which is where they were taking notes. And that's a great question. It would have been nice to have it recorded, but I understand. We have a mix of presenters to do that.
Thank you.
So, yes. Oh, yes, Katie's gonna jump in at any moment to emphasize and just go for it, Katie.
Thank you, Greg. So just to add to that, I was at the staff meeting yesterday at O'Malley, and Lynn Beatty did a fabulous job with bringing up the presentation and talking about how we can really make it applicable to what we're doing every day. I also put it on the table for anyone that was interested in doing a book study and a book study group, and the responses were really well received. So I have a number of staff, general education, special education, paraprofessionals, adjustment counselors that are interested in doing a book study at O'Malley that we're going to get up and running so that we can really dive deeper into her work, into her book, and really start to spread that wealth of knowledge across the school.
And if Katie didn't have enough on her hands starting a new position, I just was so impressed to hear that you were over there proposing a book study to follow up on this. So that's fantastic. Thank you. In the area of equity and cultural proficiency, we had summer book study. We had training for all new teachers, and we'll continue to provide training when the Zaretta Hammond work during the year for all new teachers. We had a training engagement in a culturally responsive classroom in September. This winter, we are in discussion to have all office staff, and that means administrative assistants, but anybody who interacts with the public in the sort of front of office, and that means main office, business office, me, to partner with Wellspring to really do a multi-session training on supporting and working with and interacting with English learner students and their families, and understanding the needs and helping them really navigate the system and feel not only welcome, but really truly understanding and feeling supported and having access to resources. So that's something we'll be trying to put in place, hopefully for December. And then Wellspring will also be providing from ESOL classes for parents. Under curriculum instruction and assessment, there are a couple pages here. I'm not gonna read all of these off, but we've done, it always surprises me how much is going on, even when I think we've slowed it down to adjust. So it's a lot of hardworking people out there. Keys to literacy training, math in focus. We have a new math program at the elementary school. So we had a overview training for all K-5 teachers in September. FOSS science continuation, which we were not able to do last year. So that's on one of those, did it in 1920 and brought it back this year. Structured literacy routines, dyslexia screeners, big ideas math training at the middle school, more assessment training with STAR 360. We also, and that was September 15th. On October, the high school was deeply engaged in preparation for the NEASC visit, which is next week. And by department and by team, they reviewed written curriculum and discussed observation look-fors in a classroom, how things might look, and strategies you might use in a classroom. And in from June through December, so the summer and continuing, we had ongoing extended class with graduate credit for understanding and supporting complex nature of reading and writing difficulties, including dyslexia and dysgraphia, and that's taught by Melissa Orkin, who is our connection at Tufts University and a researcher as well. Decoding math, also this summer, understanding the science of math and planning effective instruction, Becky Lord. Those are June and continuous through to December. For student engagement and learning, in the summer, we had an SEI course, a 15-hour course on classroom talk that fosters critical thinking, taught by two sheltered English immersion trainers who designed a course for that would support all learners, but provide particular strategies that would be very helpful for English learners and special needs students. September 14th, around student engagement, we had a number of sessions on engagement in a culturally responsive classroom. Carol Gregory is a person we've been working with, asking questions to get students to talk and think, also known as, you may hear it referred to as a dialogic classroom. I've been working with John Saroof. James Cook has been, and a number of staff members at the high school have been instrumental in getting this going. Review of work that I think you've heard Mr. Cook talk about with the igniting learning and the active processing. There's a review for those who needed that review or had not seen it. Academic success through sales, science and environmental expedition work at the middle school, and motivating learners, again from Melissa Orkin, did a training for motivating learners for our education support professionals. So that was all through September 14th. Now, what we continue, we brought forward and will bring forward things from 2019 and 20 that we know were really important. SEI courses, continued science training, resuming our universal design for learning training with Katie Novak, continued work on active processing, discussion strategies for getting kids to think and talk and think more deeply. So we're going to continue many of the most effective components from 19 and 20. We'll also new or expand supporting anxious or school avoidant students, because one of the things that we're seeing is we have a challenge in engaging and supporting students who are choosing not to come to school rather than to engage in the academics or whatever else is proving challenging. We're going to work on family training opportunities. Chris Castle has been working with some partners to really brainstorm how can we better support parents in accessing all the resources that we have. So we'll be doing some training for families and for staff. We'll be working with Project Adventure, which also provides embedded professional development. Amy Kim has been actively working to pilot in Trails, social emotional learning, the research-based program. That's just going to be in the pilot status, but that will require some training. More work with Jessica Minahan around work avoidance, which I wish I had when my children were in school, because as many parents remember, getting, you can have students who are engaged and motivated, and then they sit down to that task, and for some reason, the task is just very difficult to approach and get started. And once they're started, they're going. And so she does a lot of work around strategies to help students engage in that task, break it down, and understand how to move through it. More work on culturally responsive teaching. We'll be working with our administrators, training around what kinds of indicators should you expect to see, and how can you help coach the development of an engaged classroom? Katie may want to jump in here on a couple of the understanding and interpreting evaluations. Do you want to talk briefly about those?
Yes, I can do that. I also want to just highlight that so much of what you've already said, Greg, and that we've already gone through really has been, there's a lot of crossover between general education and special education. And for me, coming into a new district and seeing that that's already underway and being able to expand upon that and work with professionals that are so invested in all of our students is I'm very thankful for that. So some of the things that we have talked about more kind of on that.
You froze, if you can hear us. So Katie, you just froze. So if you can repeat what you just said, you were about to start telling us. And we only heard how you said, great that we're integrating special ed and general ed, and then you cut out.
Oh no, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So did you hear me say the highlights of how we have a lot of crossover between general
Yeah,
ed?
we heard that part, but then not that. Yeah.
And just thankful to be able to be part of the team for that. Understanding some of the work that we want to deepen our knowledge in is really understanding and interpreting evaluation results, looking at the assessment tools that we have in place, especially with the new dyslexia guidance, and really digging deep and determining what is the disability category and how do we write a measurable, effective IEP in order to best meet those needs for the students, for special education teachers. And then some training that had already happened with Alan Bloom in regards to writing accommodations and modifications for students with disabilities. Staff are really looking to go to the next steps on that and look at IEP goal writing and data collection, and really get consistent across all of the elementary schools into what we're using for tools and how we're writing those goals and measuring progress. Assistive Technology, our related service providers are fabulous with the students, but we're looking to really expand upon and deepen their level of knowledge and their expertise by bringing in some consultants that can provide training for them on how to support the teachers in the classrooms for more inclusive practice strategies on how students can access within the general education classroom, really related to low tech, high tech, augmentative communication, different tools that students can use. And then ongoing strategies for the ESPs. We've started doing some de-escalation strategies along with focusing on the Jessica Minahan piece and really building the strategies and tools that our paraprofessionals have in order to work with our students with the increasing anxiety and behaviors that we're seeing across the board. Providing them with what they need in order to be the ones to best support our students in the moment, because they're often doing that. I think that was it, Greg.
Thank you. Appreciate the further detail, but also the work in advance to try to take stock of things and help us begin the process of sort of mapping out where we've come from and where we're headed. Katie's been incredibly helpful in digging in and doing this kind of work. I'll just finish with a couple things. Attendance team training is coming. That will depend largely on our report out from Attendance Works, October 23rd, and then they will begin their phase where they provide training sessions to every single attendance team in every school, and then some group trainings as well. I will share out how that's going, because I know that's a topic that's on your minds. And then we have done and will continue to do Kinvo training, which is using a platform for improved family outreach in over 100 languages, using direct text and two-way communication and supporting tenants efforts. And then lastly, just in addition to all of the the categories that align with the entry findings and the categories that we anticipate modifying slightly, we will be making sure that that professional development supports the district plan for continuous improvement. The sustainable improvement plans submitted by the middle school and the high school, professional development will be and has been aligned to supporting those goals. We'll continue to support and add any major curriculum adoptions. We do have ELA pilots going on in the elementary school, and should one of those be selected, that will be something that'll be, I'm just sort of putting this out there. These are the things that will be appearing soon to support those should they happen. We will continue to and will expand our work on interventions and strategies to address learning loss. That may be with us for some time, and that's something that we need to have programs, curricula, and also training to support that work. And then lastly, training on best practices to reduce chronic absenteeism. That is the quick overview.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I know on one of your previous slides it said training opportunities for families,
Yes.
which I think is fabulous. I think there's many practical things that parents and guardians might be interested in. I think we've had presentations on anxiety before, mailing, social media, things like that. But I think there's some real student-specific issues that parents may, would welcome information on how to partner better and have that same knowledge of how the school is addressing maybe some of the situations.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you, Greg. And, hope we'll got something to read later on.
You'll click through everything.
Of course. Okay, we'll go back to the agenda. Were you going to talk about the administration role at the
Yeah.
school?
Well, we just lost this 1 second here.
Can we see like an $80 stipend and you work from your dining room? It looks nice when you zoom in, right?
Wait, what?
If you're admin building.
Oh, it looks like when I zoom in.
Yeah, like you get a little stipend, do it from your dining room. You can run this district from home, right?
Oh, I see. what you're
So
saying.
you really need the whole building.
No. Yes, that's no, clear no.
Look at your
Okay,
dog.
can't be any clearer than that. All right, 1 second here, sorry. So this is really intended, I shared with you, I think yesterday, sort of an earlier presentation, really actually, an earlier presentation of a study that was done, okay? I'm not gonna go through that tonight. What I really am trying to launch here is sort of the beginning of the sort of final attempt to make decisions on the long-term location, capital plan for specifically the preschool and the district offices. Of course, we know now they're housed at 2 Blackburn. It's a facility we're leasing, and we had that lease for the second, this is the first full year, for 2 more years. And there's been, and we all have, since we started leasing that building, we've always had the option to buy it. We meaning the city, okay? We, as a school committee, cannot purchase buildings. And so what I want to do here is just sort of kick that off again, all right? And I'm going to kick it off by talking, just sort of getting folks caught up here a little bit. But then I want to identify further information that you feel you need in the coming months to figure this out. We'll develop options for the school committee to consider after looking into some more information, and then presumably the school committee will make a decision on a long-term plan for preschool in 2 Blackburn in the district office. But again, so we're not deciding things tonight, but sort of getting people caught up. I hope you've looked at the presentation, which I sent to you earlier. I'm summarizing here by just telling you and others that, that study looked at a combination of placing a preschool and or the district office at 2 Blackburn, O'Malley, or GHS. There are 9 different options developed. 2 of those actually proposed building into the feasibility study of East Gloucester, which became East Gloucester Vets, and that, nothing was done from that. I mean, it was determined not to do that. So really 7 options still exist. And those range from $3.6 million, which was simply purchasing at that point, purchasing the 2 Blackburn building, to $16 million. And those estimates differed based on level of renovation or construction. So renovation meaning light, medium, or heavy, or new construction. And those were at, if I just sort of summarize things, keeping preschool, so different combinations as you looked at, of keeping preschool where it is, moving district office out to O'Malley or GHS, keeping things where they are, but purchasing the building, putting preschool at O'Malley or GHS, or a combination of both of them at those 2 schools. And so, of course, those have impacts, and the presentation sort of summarize those impacts, and give some sort of costs, which were 2 years ago, costs. So those are escalations now, but we can look into those. We can share more details about those different options and where they stand now, going forward. Some of the challenges at 2 Blackburn, and these are just sort of surface level looking at that, is right now we have insufficient space for family resource and registration center. We are actually taking over the conference room for that purpose this year, but it's a combination of family sort of resource center, really family registration center, really, not really resources there, and workspace for a variety of different staff members. Some with the preschool and some are family liaison folks. There's really insufficient space at this point to provide services for the students at the preschool, meaning related services, speech and occupational therapy, as well as having proper workspace for all the staff there. The way who is housed there now, okay, doesn't mean that we couldn't move those folks other places. That's one thing we've got to consider. It's why it's difficult to project the future enrollment of preschool. Hard to know if it's going to grow or remain the same. And that if we to grow it, I think we have to do some more marketing with it, and just continue to look at the program and what we're offering, and what we offer is it consistent with what families want, that sort of thing. That's some longer term work which we haven't begun yet. And then just another piece in terms of consideration of the cost. If 2 Blackburn is the long-term home of preschool, or wherever we had the preschool, then the playground would have to be rebuilt at Blackburn. Or wherever we go, we have to have a preschool appropriate playground. Is another way of saying that. So again, this is not. These are just sort of laying out some of the sort of considerations right now. This is not we're not moving quickly in any way, shape, or form to make this decision at this point, but want to get it going. So the reason this slide is blank, because it'd be helpful for folks, for me to know what other information would be helpful to you as we move forward. So my team can come back to you with further information, either more details about the study that was done, more analysis of what the preschool is doing, or what central office looks like at this point, space usage. Those are just some ideas that we could bring forward. What's helpful to you in terms of making these considerations in the study?
So one question I know that was sort of asked a few years ago, and I was told it was not an option, and I'm just sort of curious to go back to pathways. I know there were discussions a long time ago about how or if we could work our preschool with pathways, or somehow in coordination with pathways. And it's several years old now, but I wonder what could be possible in working with pathways.
Good, great. We can look at that. Yep.
Organize my thoughts here. So the first piece of information would be there is perpetual but renewed discussion in City Hall about bringing more of the City Hall Annex into central downtown Gloucester. I know the mayor recently remarked that she's looking at Santander property, that sort of thing. So the two sub questions to that are, one, are we doing this, are we coordinating actively with the mayor's administration, the Capital Improvement Advisory Board, and looking at long-term building plans they have, and as they shuffle buildings, is there opportunity for our admin to come with? Is there opportunity for our admin to take the place of, if all of a sudden they, move department X, Y, and Z out of one building into something else, can we go and fill a vacuum, or if they're moving to a new facility, period, is there enough room for however many offices we get, right? And I would imagine that, regardless if it's Swati or Greg come January, either one or both going to be looking at this. It's a matter that affects the city regardless, right? So I think after the dust settles, the mayor should be consulted as to what's going on there, right?
Great.
The second thing, and it's fine, I'm laughing thinking I'm the one going to say this. So I for the most part, I'm so annoyed with the amount of money we spend in the district renting things. That said, my bugaboo with the Blackburn building itself is where it is. I will concede that because of the rental agreement, the landlord does do a fair amount of the major upkeep that we as a city struggle to do with our own municipal buildings, right? And so that, that building gets things done a little more efficiently than we can when we own them ourselves. Commercial real estate is depressed and not rental commercial office space is cheaper than it's ever been right now because the pandemic sent people out of office spaces and not all are returning. And so I'd be curious to look to see whether or not, despite this is something that wouldn't come from me, is there actually commercial office space, in Gloucester that is, economic to rent, because right now people are just you say, hey, I've got X offices I need to fill. They say, oh my goodness, it's perfect because I really need to get floor 2 rented again. It's been vacant since April of 2020, right? And can we use that to leverage a long-term lease at a lower rate that, functions, an actual office space for actual office use by the district. Thank you.
Melissa?
Years back, we did enrollment projections.
Yep.
Like to take a look at those to see how accurate they turned out, because I think it was 4 or 5 years ago that we did it. So I'd like to see where we are in those predictions and maybe see if we can cast out a few more years, but I'd also like to see what the impact of with the YMCA opening a preschool, how that impacted what we thought was going to happen with our prediction of enrollment for that last year. I mean, I know COVID kind of threw a wrench into things last year with enrollment in preschool, probably even with the Y, but I've also heard that it was a successful program, and I'm curious to see how that impacted our projections that we had for that year and going forward, so that we know the amount of kids, we kind of have an idea of how many kids we're going to be looking at in a preschool going forward. That's the kind of information I would want to know.
Very helpful.
Samantha?
I'd like to hear more specifically and directly from the preschool staff, just about what their hopes are in a future or staying in the current space. Is it working? What are the challenges? I know you've laid it out a little bit, but
Yeah, just really surface.
I think just more in depth. I mean, I know, and I would also like to hear from families that have gone there about what their thoughts are on the space, because I know there has been hesitancy just in my cohort of people to send their kids there based on the space, right? Like playground space, where it's located. And so I would like to see, I'd like to hear some more information about what families think about where it is currently.
About the where it is, or also, you said specifically where it is at the end there, but before you were saying more about concerns or questions or why they've gone, or I think you also said sound like folks who have gone there, parents, what their questions were or concerns about or what they liked or didn't like about the building itself, right?
Yes.
Okay, both.
So from Melissa's question, with enrollment projections, I know there was some talk around, and this was disputed last year, but is there space in O'Malley at this point? And do we project that there is space? And same with GHS. Where are our projections now? And how much space is there? And would that space be effective space for the administrative offices?
Following on,
Sorry.
what you had also said about what we're offering, what families ideally want. Because I know in the past, we did talk about families in the lunch bunch and things like that. So are there families not choosing it because they really want the longer day at preschool? Because if we're thinking long-term, we know we have, a requirement to service, certain kids. But to make it a robust preschool and maybe a little more financially viable preschool, we would want to know, are we offering things? I mean, I know most of what I've heard has been extremely positive without, any friends that I've had, kids have gone there have been nothing but amazingly happy. Can't contain their appreciation for their experience of their kids.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%.
Joel? The other question, I think the answer might be easy enough for you to do, is just confirm whether on both the admin side and the preschool side, stuff needs to stay together. On the admin side, you go with the advent of, the incorporation of video conferencing technology, et cetera. So does every single person in the central office have to be in a central office?
Right.
Or could it be in 2 or 3 sites and still function effectively without much loss? You lose something, I think, when you can't walk from your office down a hall into another office, but is that a sacrifice that's worth it because there's another benefit? And I think I know the answer. I think it's been answered before. Just again, is there the preschool program? Does the preschool program have to be all together with cohort, or is there a potential that you make 2 schools a PK5 school instead of a K5 school? And while we're about to order more modulars, do we order 2 more here and 2 more there and go, okay, now these 2 schools are our preschool through K schools, preschool through 5 schools. Sorry.
I would just say that politicians are always talking about making preschool compulsory or
Right.
or funding it. And I don't think there's any way to really find out if that's in the future, but I think that it has to be in the back of our head that there's the potential in the future that we're going to have to provide preschool for everybody.
So,
It would be a big change, wouldn't it?
That would change it. Samantha?
So with COVID over the last 18 months.
Yeah.
I think there's been a lot of change in like where people want to live. And I don't have any like real evidence of this other than sort of anecdotal, but I know that young families are really looking to move out of cities. And I've met quite a few young families who've recently chose to come to Gloucester because it's more affordable than some other surrounding towns.
Yeah.
And so I've talked to a few people that seem to think that we're going to have sort of an increase in young families moving in.
Yeah.
And so in previous years, all I've heard is, our projections are sort of low in terms of families, but I really think COVID has changed that possibility. And so I would really like to sort of either figure out ways to get a more accurate projection or just think more critically about what that looks like. I'm not really even sure who to ask, but my gut and other people's guts are sort of saying that like young families are really trying to get closer to the North Shore, out of Boston, and Gloucester is more approachable and more affordable than many other communities.
Anything else? You got your work cut.
No, really, thank you very much. Very, very helpful. We'll do our best on all of these, obviously. It's gonna take a little bit of time, but it's great to begin with this and then figure out what we can deliver on, and so you have information as we go along. So great, so appreciate it. And I just want to assure everyone that this is not a sudden movement. And not only you, but all the preschool folks listening and all, meet with Anne Marie and other folks, but I just want, we have had, the preschool's had this sort of, I won't say specter, but it's uncertainty out there. And I want to resolve that and I want us to resolve it, long term, and so we can have some stability and plan for. One example of that is we've been hesitant to make any improvements on the playground because pouring a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars into a rental space is obviously problematic. So that's what it is.
The last point I would hope or implore is that, like, sometimes inertia is our worst enemy. And so I appreciate our leases coming up to another end. There's always a chance the landlord says, yeah, I know, so you guys should have to pull the trigger here and buy this thing, or I'm going to have to find, another tenant, or I'm going to have to get you into a really long-term lease. I would hope that, we recognize as a district and the city that even if that tripwire is tripped and we have to purchase the building, that does not mean we still have to be programmatically married to that building for this, and that the city can't do any number of things, including resell it, a few years later. If we say, our lease is up, we got to buy the thing, but this really isn't making sense for our spatial needs anymore. We're going to keep looking at getting it right, and then we'll move on to the preschool building and declare it surplus, and the city can, sell it back out, because the industrial park's otherwise full. It's not invaluable real estate. So I would just implore that if we do end up buying it, that we wouldn't say that, oh, that's it, decision made for us. We can't look at other options now.
Right.
Anything else? Then we'll move on to committee reports, and we have a report from the program subcommittee meeting of October 6th.
Yes, so the program subcommittee met for the first time in a long time, and we got some presentations. There were no action items that came out of it. And speaking of ESSER 3, we talked about the potential to help bolster the recovery from loss of learning and the other setbacks that were a result of the pandemic, and especially the interruption that happened in the spring of the first year. One of the things that was talked about, there was a lot of additional support staff that has been highlighted as an opportunity to pull in through ESSER 3. And in discussing it, we only discussed it from a programmatic standpoint. I would imagine that BNF will probably get their hands on it also, because this ESSER money, will fade out over the next 3 years or something like that. And if there is valuable staffing positions, it's going to have an impact down the road. And then there was also, again, about trying to just bring some equity across the district as far as resources. The Beeman Playground came up. This is a great, ability to kind of one-time expense and funds on something that otherwise is hard to fit into the budget with all the needs the district has. And it was all just, as the agenda item mentioned, it was kind of cursory, but it was a little start to see what the opportunities are. One thing should be highlighted is that the decisions are not being made in a vacuum. The decisions are being made in consultation with administration, with teachers, with parents, and with this committee also. There's been 2 surveys that have gone out, I believe, asking for input from families as to, hey, if we receive money, is there some stuff you'd like to see us work on? And the presentation that was given that gave a percentage breakdown as to what the main concerns were for parents, the main wishes were for parents. We talked about the school committee calendar as far as the various items we predict throughout the year that need to be reported on to the committee, and actions the committee needs to take as far as approving certain things, reviewing the superintendent's performance. And I think that nothing really got shuffled around. The calendar as presented was agreed to be, pretty dialed in. Would you recall there's one you highlighted something?
It was the CBT.
It was a CBT.
Oh, that's correct. Yeah, yeah.
Actually, I'll pass out these to the committee.
Yeah. And then
I haven't changed that, but just the comment of the CBT was if we're going to be doing due diligence around, building a program, which I'll announce more later tonight, then maybe we wait for some more of that work to do and give a presentation of the review.
Right.
We'll do that.
we also discussed, obviously being sensitive to the fact that, like in all professions, but especially in education, things can change. The extent with which some of these presentations, reports, and our information is predictable in advance, the idea that the committee would hopefully receive it, a few days before the meeting, so that when we get to meetings, whenever possible, instead of spending 45 minutes getting a presentation and 10 minutes discussing it, we'd spend 10 minutes getting a refresher on what we've already read and spend a bulk of time really digging into it, right? And again, that's not possible for every one of these, but for the ones that were possible, we'll kind of concerted effort to have us do the reading ahead of time and come in to talk about the topic instead of learn about the topic at the meeting. And then lastly, Adam Mayo joined us for further updates on transportation. We focused a lot on getting a better understanding as to how bus drivers interact with their passengers, how they interact with their passengers' families. We also discussed at the beginning of the year protocol, and Adam actually had some really, it's his parting gift to us. He's obviously very skilled in student transportation. He gave us a few, here's what you're doing well, and here's if you can add these components in going forward in future years, you can really streamline this district. One of it, which was talking about orientation, we talked about the idea that instead of kindergartners getting on the bus for the first time ever after school has already started for the rest of the grades, to in fact try and see this opportunity to get them on a bus for a trial run, get them familiarized with a bus. Same thing when students transfer from one school to another. If we had a before school starts day at the end of the summer that says, hey, if you're a new bus rider or you're new to the school, we're doing this trial run day, teach your kindergartner how to use the bus, that sort of thing, right? And we also talked about the new communication platform that is going to be made available fairly soon to families. That's going to allow for much more real-time updating of families as to what's going on with the buses, if there's a change in route, if there's a substitute that day. And then Adam said we don't have the hardware yet, but obviously he thought the next round of leases might be easier than retrofitting what we have now. But you can also add a GPS component, and then again, parents who are using this app. So Laura mentioned her experience of some days she's tapping her toes in the rain waiting for the bus to show up, and some days she's running down the driveway because the bus is here. Suddenly you'd be able to from your home watch the bus in the app and go, oh, they hit the bridge. You can watch one more episode. They're at the bridge. Okay, don't pack up yet. Right? So these are all modern technologies that are out there that Adam has identified, and the software itself has already been brought to the district. There's just a few more components that we need to be in the next round of buses that would allow us to really expand and use the full capacity of the app itself.
Can I ask a question about it? Just so, he also mentioned, I don't know if it's an iPad.
Oh, yeah, the tablet, yeah.
The tablet situation where kids can sort of check in and off of buses so that people know if the kid gets off the bus and where. So at what point, even with the Ride 360, do we sort of bounce this over to BNF to discuss what the initial cost of some of this stuff would be?
Yeah.
Anytime you want.
I guess before Adam,
Yeah.
I don't know if we can put it on his plate, but I'm just sort of curious,
I think before the next round of buses, it would come up because the hardware would probably be the next. But yeah, when you talk about the little tablet that's built in and you tap on, it's okay, Joel Favazzi got on the bus and Joel Favazzi's stop is number 7, that sort of thing. And then and so it's none of it's reinventing the wheel, all that is out there already. It would just be about us adopting it as far as the technology, the equipment, and the best practices all out there. We don't have to figure it out. We just have to have someone show us how.
One last thing to add on that, it's okay, is we also talked about the 7D van program. So for all our vans, transportation outside district, we contract with transportation companies. We all are, internal, including Gloucester ourselves. And Adam and Gary have been talking and thinking through about can we build that internally over time that has the potential to reduce our costs quite a bit, just because there's not much competition for those routes and that service, which means that the price on goes in one direction.
I think we did that years ago.
We think we
When I
did. It was
first got
used
on
to.
the committee, we transported for Rockport and Essex, I believe.
and the
Yeah.
drivers are easier to hire for that.
Right,
Yeah,
because the
yeah.
training isn't as long term.
And the drivers who are training for the full-size buses while they're in training can pick up the van shifts.
What they're talking about is the special ed, private school transportation, is that correct?
Right, yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, they-
We're doing.
The vans,
No,
go
no,
outside the
what we
district.
used to do is we used to actually have our buses transport Rockport kids. We used to sub out and Manchester.
Yeah.
And Essex.
That's
too.
interesting.
Yeah, Manchester, Essex.
But that's.
That's a new action coming out of the program, so that was it.
Okay, let's move on to action. In that case, we have 4 grants to approve.
Can I ask a question? The Beaman Playground,
Yes.
what is the next step on the Beaman Playground? Because it's come up at BNF.
So the hope is that because there's an active and willing PTO that, but for funding, has been looking at this, renovation of a playground. We're hoping that we'd be able to leverage, rather than tax the administration, tax, DPW unnecessarily, that we would just say, hey, Beaman PTO, we've set aside some funds for playground replacement. Can you please get us, the information and what you'd like to do? And then it'd be a matter of just kind of reviewing, rather than us, again, figuring out what playground we think should go there. They've gone through this exercise a couple times. And again, but for funding, because, playground equipment is expensive. It just hasn't gone the next step. So I think they're kind of locked and loaded, but they need kind of one more, I know, I'm sorry, I love your face. I think they're primed and ready and,
Same thing.
no, please. Please,
They've done a lot of research.
they are prepared and excited. What do you want from me?
So how does that fit with any playground we've done in our new buildings? Structurally, who checks it? It's one thing to say this is what we want, it's another for it actually to be implemented from a on the ground, in the ground safety aspect. So that's one piece, and then there's the other piece.
So I don't know how playgrounds have been designed here. I just don't know that. Someone else can. But it does always make sense to have some combination of folks who are family members, PTO leaders, or who have been thinking a lot about it and looking into researching it. But then also some of the nuts and bolts of whether it's design, some design process, or whether it's vetting process, or just like how do we connect that with the mechanism of the city to get it done?
Right.
So I think there's some. So there's some connection there.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to talk to Jody or Gary or anyone about, or anyone DPW. I am meeting with Gary and I are having our every 3-week meeting with DPW tomorrow. So put on that agenda and just talk through just some of the basics of how do we connect the two so it actually this happens. I don't want to have PTO and really sort of unleash them, and then for whatever, how much time, a week, 3 weeks, 4 weeks or more, and then realize that we said they're not a dead end. So I want to get some information about just how to have it, make sure that they happen.
Right, and then if the goal is a particular time frame, summer is the time frame, right? To do anything like this, there's a procurement process, so
Right, all
it's
those
the
pieces, right?
whole what dates are you trying to hit? Because I know we've been hearing about the playground for many years.
I've been hearing about it for 4 months, or 3 months, just so you folks know. We didn't hear about it much last year. So anyway, I'm not trying to put it off. I'm saying like it's still a new thing. So for me anyway, so we're trying to get it rolling, and that really made the final decision on that just a couple weeks ago, or a week ago, I think. So, but hear the urgency from the committee. I certainly understand it from the Bremen folks, and and similar, I think, with Plum Cove as well. But so anyway, so we'll get rolling on it and reach out to folks.
Laura?
So just on what you're saying, Kathy, I mean, one of the things they also do know is that, as in so many things with the pandemic, there's supply chain issues.
Yeah,
So
oh my gosh.
everything is slower. And they, it was actually around even PTO's questions around the veterans playground. They actually went back, they found who installed it. I mean, they have been doing research on who's been doing the installations at our schools in the past. So there is some data. Obviously, it has to be coordinated with DPW and figured out. But I do think it is something to really push on as much as we can to move aggressively.
Yeah, because we want to get.
We need to get it started.
Use out of it.
And just, we talked briefly, that these projects, although have to go through other steps, aren't as heavy a lift as they need to appear I use the Oval as the example, you know, the Oval playground was redone, literally like it was done in part. The company came out and accepted volunteers from the neighborhood and that playground went up over the weekend. Again, there was planning leading up to it, which is what you're talking about, but it's not like, oh, we need 6 weeks to build a playground. You really, my understanding is need a very short amount of time to,
But you need to order it.
right when it shows up, then you whatever that is.
Okay, anything else? Then we can move on to approval of grants. And the first one is the Gloucester Education Foundation grant, the amount of $1,500 for whiteboards for GHS for student collaborations. And I so move.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
So I saw in the letter that they'd like us to begin funding these. So that's just something to kind of be aware of.
Yeah, so and I've spoken, MSC about that, is this is the sort of thing that you know, we should be paying for. And so, you know, there's some approval process here, but this is, and part of that's just making sure that our folks understand the budgeting process and when and how to progress this sort of thing. So GF was okay with it this time, but I understand and support their advice on this.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other discussion? Maria, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Clancy,
Yes,
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
I don't know what the motion was, so I'm gonna abstain.
Education Foundation grant.
I'm gonna abstain.
okay. Ms. Watson,
Yes,
Ms. Weason.
Yes.
Okay, carries 5 in favor, 1 abstention. The next order is the Gloucester Education Foundation grant in the amount of $120,000 for the Gloucester High School CVTE program. I so move.
Second.
Discussion. Joel.
So is this to hire the administrator required to oversee once you get to 4 or more programs?
Yeah, so let me just, thank you for that, sort of teeing it up. Yes, this is actually quite a good deal. So you may remember sometime last spring, James Cook and I presented to you, and we also presented to the city council on a plan to do the due diligence to understand, analyze, and figure out and decide on adding a new program in our career voc tech education program. And that was going, what we said then was in the FY23 budget, we would request from all of you funding for administrator to begin a 3-year process of planning and then implementing. Okay, because you first had to do, if you remember, year 0 essentially, year 1 really. Year 1 was the due diligence around understanding what program we could add, what's going to work for students, what's going to be attractive, that sort of stuff, what we need to put in place, making that decision. The second year, you have to work with the state, get that program approved while you're developing all the curriculum, getting materials, that sort of stuff. And then year 3, you implement, okay? Year 1 was going to be next year. This allows us to have year 1 this year. So, which is a big deal. And that was great work from GF, from 1625 Foundation and others to an Aria McLean, the outgoing director, was just fantastically helpful. James Cook was fantastically helpful, but it's really a big thing. We're advertising for that position now, and just excited to get that moving basically, and they just sort of a year in advance get it rolling.
Joel.
So the few things I think the answer is cosmetology, nursing, and culinary. But we had this staff member in district. She was the vice principal of this high school, and like 2 or 3 budgets ago, we cut her position and fired her. Right. So I'm curious.
I think it was longer ago than that, but I'm not quite sure.
I'm eliminating a few, but anyway, real license. And so, like this is one of those things where it's like. Which direction are we going, guys? Right? Because we had this person and we fired her, and now we're going to hire, but she's also a vice principal, right? So I'm curious if there's a way to, as I look at, watching Principal Cook and the hours he's working, is there a way that does this administrator need to be dedicated CVTE? Does that they do their full-time job as far as, taking, or is it able to be a more general purpose administrator that happens to be CVTE qualified and that can oversee this also, and maybe also, multiple birds, single stone sort of.
Yeah, in terms of this grant specifically, it's CBT focused period, okay? In terms of moving forward, in terms of administrator, don't know that yet, got to work with James and the committee here to really determine that and what the needs are at the high school. So, but I will say this is that, myself and my priorities, what I've heard from the community members, what I've heard from other folks, city council, that sort of thing, is there's a real commitment to the CBTE program here. And we all believe that it has the potential to grow. Hard to really grow and invest in something if you don't have the leadership to do it well. And the reason for that is the leadership creates the partnerships, leadership supports the staff, leadership gets in additional dollars, especially for a CBT program. You really can't do it as well as I think we all would like to without some real leadership. So, the plan has been to have a full-time person, okay? That's not cut in stone, obviously, but we do think that's what it takes to really grow this thing way forward. And that means, as if you remember, the work we're doing is strengthening the existing programs, building those even further, and also adding a program, making that's strong. If it was just building one new program, then perhaps we could do this. I'm not saying we can't, but it's both and. Certainly one of the things we can do even more of is partnerships with unions and that sort of stuff, and local companies and local and that takes real legwork. They don't happen and they don't sustain just sort of just magically. So
Melissa?
I believe if we have more than 4 programs, we have to have a full-time vocational person.
Yes,
We got away with it before because we only had 4 programs.
right, that's true.
So I believe you have to look into that. And also, as you consider expanding, you may want to reach out to Heidi Riccio, the superintendent of the tech, because we have a non-compete agreement with the programs at that school. You have to get permission, not only from the state, but from them as well, to institute any program that's competitive with theirs. I don't foresee any problems, but you might want to have that conversation before you get to year 2 to figure out what boundaries that you may be in as far as expanding. I know that a lot of work has been done in this community by some people that are on the Gloucester Red Foundation and other community members as far as what programs would suit this community based on the needs of this community. And one of them was like the nursing program, because you come out of their CNAs, and we have many homes in Gloucester that require CNAs and they can't fill the positions, and they came to us saying, no, if you had this program going, we would hire right out of your program. So some of that work has been done already too. And obviously we need to be updated with the times.
I think so I agree entirely in terms of like working with NSAT, that sort of thing, working with Heidi, making sure in the states, make sure we're going down a path we actually can do, and not, but also the work with the mass hire in terms of knowing part of the due diligence, working with mass hire and getting their expertise on what's the industry, what are the career pathways, and really are good around here. Healthcare certainly is, and there's some others as well. And another piece, of course, as we said in the springtime, is how do we diversify in terms of what the types of students that are attracted to the CBT program, and so some healthcare is a possibility certainly.
And then space, where are you gonna put them? How much space do you need?
Which ties into 2 Blackford conferences.
It's a big conversation.
Great, thank you.
Anything
Yeah,
else?
so we're excited about this. This is a big deal, and I really appreciate the support of these foundations.
Could we have a roll call vote, Maria?
Dr. Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Cavazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Weezer.
Yeah.
Passes unanimously. The next grant is a DESE 21st Century Community Learning Grant in the amount of $139,213, and I so move.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none. Maria, can we have a roll call vote?
Dr. Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Cavazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Weezer.
Yes.
Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. The Perkins Grant in the amount of $29,294, and I so move.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none.
How much was it?
$29,294. Maria, roll call vote?
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weezer.
Yes.
Carries unanimously. We'll move on to.
Was that more or less than last year? Or the year before?
On Perkins?
Yeah.
I don't know honestly, but we can. I'll email the committee.
I'll look it up. The East Gloucester Veterans Memorial School Building Committee update. As you all should be aware, we're having groundbreaking ceremony a week from tomorrow at 9:30.
It's gonna be sunny.
It's gonna be sunny. We won't need umbrellas or tents.
It will still be dusty, so don't wear your best shoes.
Or,
It's a construction site.
wear appropriate footwear. But it should be nice. The kids are gonna come. We're gonna have the third graders from East Gloucester vets bust in and to see the ceremony and participate.
It's a week from tomorrow.
Week from tomorrow.
Sorry, okay. That's, I heard the tomorrow part was like, oh. I'm doing this all wrong.
Yeah, week from tomorrow. We're in the adding the final planning tomorrow to that event. There's the building committee's meeting tomorrow. The main item on the agenda will be proprietary items to go into the contract. Proprietary items would be like, what sort of alarm system, do we want to be specific and say we want this specific alarm system as opposed to just putting some general criteria out. So we'll be having those discussions tomorrow. Because we're getting to that point where they're preparing the bid contracts to go out for all of that, all of it. Anything else, Kathy?
What will we expect to see over the next couple months happening at the site?
I think that the goal, they'll be putting in drainage. They're doing that now. They may be doing that now. I know they have to put in a bunch of temporary drainage and then we put in permanent drainage. And then they'll be putting in cement for the foundation.
And we can give, I can give the committee a sort of a month ahead, month look ahead, that sort of thing, each meeting going forward. And also we should have that up on the, we don't have it yet on the website, but we should have that sort of like a month ahead or whatever they have 2 month look ahead. Sometimes a 2 week look ahead, sometimes a 2 month look ahead, that sort of thing.
And there is provisions for the sort of time lapse camera view of the site, which I don't think is up public yet, but we've seen some of it. And that'll eventually be available. Go online and see what's happening. See pictures of.
Live?
I think so.
Yeah, they capture every.
Yeah.
So it's like a cam.
Yeah, it's like a still and then another still
Oh,
and another still.
That we'll be able to, at the end of the day.
You can play it fast.
See the whole thing.
Like something that quick.
So when West Parish happened, they didn't put it up in time to get the demolition, but they then put it up and it was winter with tons of snow. So it was kind of funny to see it get snowed on.
right.
Hey, can I ask, is the Green Street Playground project discussed at the building committee level or is that
No.
separate?
They're separate.
And how can we get updates on that status, knowing?
Well, they came out with a plan. They presented a plan a month ago. So DPW was in charge of that.
I think Barry Pett, the working counselor, is he was having a meeting or had a meeting with the neighbor or something.
They put out a preliminary draft,
Yeah, Barry took it and put it out to the.
but I'm just wondering what actual decisions have been made. Is that just there for this is wishing and hoping, or are they actually planning a start date for this project?
I don't know. That'd be DPW, I guess.
But
Put on your meeting agenda, one more question to ask.
but
He's meeting with the DPW tomorrow, right?
Yeah, well, and I believe that Mike Hale will be at BNF next week.
Yeah, that's right, actually.
I just, you think softball season is kind of far away, but not really, and I just want to make sure that we have everything lined up for a start, regardless of what that plan is.
Well, I would say it's probably unlikely that you're gonna be playing softball on that field next year. I mean,
Because grass can't grow.
Right.
grass just doesn't take that quickly. I
Unless
mean,
they put it in
when we did West Parish, there was a year
Right.
that they couldn't use that field because it takes a while. If you put people on it too soon, it just destroys it. Anyways, there's enough fields, and once again, we can make the high school field available. Anything else on the building? Have we heard anything from the Department of Public Health about the
My latest information is that they are going to discuss it at their meeting tomorrow night. They haven't voted on it or had a discussion, so that's for their meeting tomorrow night, and then I'm gonna speak to a member who will brief me on it, and I'll bring it to you at the next meeting.
Okay, great.
I mean, I'll bring it to the full committee.
So we'll table that again for the next meeting. Is there anything else we want to take up under new business for discussion? Okay, seeing none, do we want to go back into executive session to continue talking about negotiations? Okay, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Roll call vote, Mike. Thank you.
Kathy Clancy,
Yes.
Lisa Piazza,
Yes.
Karen McCall,
Yes.
Mike Burns,
Yes.
Mike Preston. Yes. Yes.
We're adjourned, and thank you all for tuning in tonight. We laughed, we cried, but we made it. Here we are.